I want to know what content you should be master and what content should be low. Here, I put all the content here. For the clinical manifestation, diagnosis, and therapy of infective endocarditis, we need to be mastered. And pathogenesis and complications should be low. And the etiology and the mechanism, we should be low. What content we should discuss in this afternoon? Here, we need to discuss the introduction, mechanism, pathogenesis, clinical manifestation and examination, diagnostic standard, and therapy for the infective endocarditis. So first, we need to, let's say, the definition of infective endocarditis. Infective endocarditis is a microbial infection of the heart valves and the endocardium adjacent to the congenital on arterial venous fistula. Is divided into acute and subacute based on the progress of disease. But for the acute infective endocarditis, there's so much factors like the much greater virulence, virulent progress fast over days to weeks. It's formally about 6 weeks. And the third is high propensity. And the microbial infection, the most common is the staphylococcus. But for the subacute infective endocarditis, the character is the low virulence. The progress is very slow. Actually, it's last 4 weeks and several weeks and to several months. And it's low propensity. The microbial infection, the most common is the staphylococcus. But based on the pathogenesis, we can divide the infective endocarditis into 3 types. The first is the latent valvular endocarditis. The second is the post-septal valves. The third is the endocarditis in intravenous drug abusers. Today we focus on the latent valvular endocarditis. For latent valvular endocarditis, there's the first we talk about the etiology. I just said the most common microbial infection is the streptococcus. The streptococcus variant and the staphylococcus are responsible for 65% or 25% respectively. But for the acute IE caused by staphylococcus, also by the pneumococcus and the ginococcus, the streptococcus, and so on. But for the subacute IE, the most common microorganism is the streptococcus. How about the mechanism for the subacute IE? At least the 2/3 subacute IE occurs with the factors as follows. The first one is the hemodynamic events. About 75% have evidence of pre-existing structural cardiac abnormality. But for the valvular heart disease is the most common, especially the mitral valvulus and the aortic valvulus involved. Congenital heart disease such as the intraventricular septal defects is secondary to valvular heart disease. And the other is the atrial septal defects. Because the low hemoperfusion allows the deposition of the microorganism, so that can result in the can produce the nodular insufficiency. The second factor is the lung bacterial thrombosis in the cardiac lesions. The deposition of the fibrin and the platelets produce the lung bacterial nodular insufficiency, which means much to the deposition of the microorganism and the cardiac. The third factor is the transient bacteremia. Transient bacteremia may result from any infected focus on the body. When the bacteria in circulation inhibit on the non-bacterial insufficiency. So what should be happened? Bacteria infect the lung bacterial insufficiency is the third factor for the IE. That depends on the frequency of the transient bacteremia and the amount of the bacteria in circulation, the capability of the bacteria to adhere the fibrin and the microsomes. As we know, the Streptococcus virus is the most common causative organism of subacute IE because it's easiest of entering the blood and steadily adhering. So I summarize the mechanism here. The first, there is existing cardiac disease, and on the other hand, hemodynamic events should be happening, and then all the two factors result into the endocardial lesions. If the lesions means the lung bacterial microsomes, the transient bacteria should make the bacterial insufficiency. Finally, it results in the infective endocarditis. I can say here is the bacterial insufficiency. It should be. How about for the acute infective endocarditis? It's different from the subacute IE. The character for the acute IE and the mechanism is unknown. Most involve the normal valve, and organisms come from the active infected focus from skin, muscle, skeleton, and the lung. The third is the great virulence. It's large amount in the high invasion, instead steady adherent. And the last one is the aortic valve, always involved. So let's say the pathogenesis. So the first one is the endocardial infection and partial spread. The basic pathogenic changes is the extrinsic mechanism and the perforation of the valvular leaflet, rupture of the border and candy, incontinence and finally result in the incompetence of the valves. For the partial spread, any abscess of the alveolus and the myocardium organ without fracture of the papillary muscle. There should be perforation of the interventricular defect, turbulent pericarditis. The second is the splinter of the vegetation lead to the embolism. If there is some organ embolization, should cause the organ infection and necrosis. On the other hand, there should be the bacterial aneurysm. The third pathogenesis is the blood-bone thread. Blood-bone thread can make a lot of the migrating abscesses. The third, infective endocarditis can activate the immune system. There should be present the splenomegaly and glomerulonephritis, arthritis, pericarditis, and microvascularitis. Then we need to talk about the clinical manifestations. The most common manifestation is the fever. Fever is the most frequent symptoms. For the subacute IE, remittent fever is always so the remittent fever. Temperature always less than the 39 degree and accompanied by headache, backache, and anemia, weight loss of the appetite, loss of weight. But for the acute infective endocarditis, the fever is accompanied by chills, and sometimes accompanied by the heart failure. The second symptom is the heart murmurs. Heart murmurs can be heard in about 80% to 85% of the patients when they have the valvular lesion caused by the pre-existing cardiac disease or endocarditis. Here, we need to pay attention to the changes of the murmurs. If we heard the murmur in any patients in clinical, we need to persuade the patient to do some exams like the ultrasound or ECG and so on. So, how about the peripheral signs for the infective endocarditis? So, in the peripheral signs for the infective endocarditis is non-specific and uncommon. But sometimes we can need the fistula, linear hemorrhages and layers, and the rose spots, like this one. Rose spots is a small hemorrhage in retina. It's like the flame-shaped tiles. And sometimes we can say the ulcerous load. It's painful red and pepper. Odors in the periphery of the fingers. Okay, let's see the picture. Okay, like this one is the ulcer spot. And here. Okay, otherwise we can say genuine lesions. What's the genuine lesions? Is the erythematous border lesions may develop on the palms of the hand and the soles of the feet. It's not painful. So we need to differ from the ulcerous load. I just said ulcerous is painful, red and purple, but the genuine lesion is not painful. All these signs are caused by microembolism. So let's say the embolization About 10% and 40% of patients have embolization caused by the insufficiency. It can happen at any position, such as brain, heart, spleen, kidney, mesentery, and limbs are common sites. Like this one, embolism occurs in the foot. Let me see, the tissue is in the blood. It should be necrosis. Okay, there's other lung-specific manifestation like the splenomegaly. I just said the infective endocarditis can activate the immune system. So 15 to 50% of the patients in the course more than 6 weeks, that's in the acute patients anemia. Always stay in the subacute patients, light or the moderate. When it comes to the late period, it becomes severe. It's due to the myelosuppression caused by infection. So we can see some problem. So there are some complications always accompanied with the main manifestation. For heart, in clinical, the heart failure is most frequent. And myocardial abasis is always seen in acute patients. And third, acute myocardial infection is most caused by pleural embolism. Purulent pericarditis is mainly seen in acute patients. And last one for the heart, there's some patients could have the myocarditis. But for the bacterial allorism should be present in some patients. And metastatic abasis, we can always see it in the clinical patients. The others is the liver system. About 1/3 patients involved liver system lesion. There's some there's such as the cerebral embolism and cerebral abscess. But for the kidney, that should be cured by the microorganism. Most patients have renal lesions, like the renal embolization and renal infection, and renal abasis. So how to examine the infective endocarditis? I just talk about the main steps. The first, we need to do blood culture because as we know, infective endocarditis always caused by microorganisms. So we need to figure out what organism caused the disease. About the 75 to 85% positive in the infective endocarditis. The most important method for diagnosis occurred 3 times per 2 weeks. We need to do the blood culture. Sometimes we need to do the blood culture before we use the antibiotic. In other words, if we want to treat the patients, we need to do blood culture before all treatments. If we use the antibiotic for the patient, there should be killed all the organisms for a short time. If we collect the blood, at that time we cannot get any positive results. So we need to collect the blood culture before use any antibiotic. But for the subacute 3 times in the first day, 3 times blood culture in the first day. In the other way, we need to do again 3 times in the second day. Then we can start to use the antibiotics. That method is gained positive results from so many years clinical trials. The second examination is the echocardiograph. Although ultrasound for the heart can identify 50 to 75% of the bacterial vegetations, ultrasound can identify bacterial vegetation, which size in 1.5 micrometer is sensitive to 95%. So ultrasound is the very common tool for common tool for diagnostic the infectious endocarditis. The third is X-ray diagnosis for the complications. I just said so many complications coming with the infectious endocarditis, like heart failure, and embolism, and brain, and immune system. But the X-ray diagnosis is very useful for the septic pulmonary emboli benefits. But for the immunoresistant, it cannot be used because the X-ray just shows the image of the organs and the tissue. It cannot take out what should be present in the blood or immune system. So there should be the 4 electrocardiograph. Electrocardiograph is non-specific for the infectious endocarditis. In clinical, we can say acute myocardial infarction or atriovascular conduction abnormalities. Like I said, ST segment depressed, but it's not specific. It's non-specific. So how to diagnose? How about the diagnosis? Here, I showed the clinical diagnosis standard in 1998. It's modified from the Duke diagnosis standard. And this standard we use in clinical. The first way to say the chief standard. What's the chief standard? I just said blood culture is very important for the infectious endocarditis because infectious endocarditis always caused by the microorganism. If we can think out the mechanism, so we can make sure what's the cause for that disease. How about the chief standard for the blood culture? Blood culture is to positive twice, and the pathogenic organism are the same one. If just one times, we cannot make sure that organism just cause the infectious endocarditis. So that should be the twice. If we collect blood culture for 3 times, we just get 1 time is positive and the other 2 times is negative. We cannot make sure that diagnosis. So need to do another 3 times blood culture. As for the blood culture, we need to define for the clinical diagnosis. And the second chief standard is the echocardiograph, find the vegetations. As I showed in before slides, there's a bacterial excretancy deposited on the valvula. If we use the ultrasound exam the heart, if we can find the vegetation in the valve or some the endocarditis, we can make sure the diagnosis. I just talked about the chief standards, so I need to talk about secondary standard. The secondary standard including 6 criteria. The first one is the history of pre-existing heart disease or the intravenous drug abuse. As we talked about before, the mechanism of the infective endocarditis. The first one is the basically pre-existing heart disease. That should always have the abnormality in the structure of the valvular or caudal or the septum in ventricle or in atrium. So this criteria is the basic for the infective endocarditis. The second one is the fever. The fever for acute or the subacute is different. I just said for acute, the fever is transit and the temperature always low. It's always below the 39 degrees. But for subacute temperature is the low fever. The third is the vascular phenomena, like the embolism, bacterial aneurysm, and the intracranial hemorrhage, conjunctival bacteria, and Janus lesion. And there's all these signs caused by the immune system activation. Rather, there are other immune response, like the ultraload, rose spot, and rheumatic factor positive. Here, we need to pay attention to the RF. RF is the rheumatic factor. Rheumatic factor is the main marker of the rheumatic disease. But why RF is positive in infective endocarditis? I just said infective endocarditis can activate the immune resistance. So the immune resistance includes the rheumatic factor. So sometimes rheumatic factor can be the positive. And the other one is the blood culture positive. In the chief standard, we just talk about blood culture. Here is easy to twice positive, but for this one, sometimes just one time is positive. And the blood culture shows the microorganism is not the classic. Sometimes it's very rare microorganism. And sometimes the microorganism is not correspond to the chief standard. And the last one is the ultrasound matches the infective endocarditis, but not matches the chief standard. That means ultrasound cannot find any excrescency in valvules, but sometimes the ultrasound can find some incompetence of the valvules or the valvular stenosis and so on. All this is the diagnosis standard. We need to remember all the contents. But how to diagnose it? How to diagnose? If there are 2 shift standards or 1 shift standard and 3 secondary standards or 5 secondary standards, we can diagnose the infective endocarditis. This criteria is specific which to 99%, sensitive which to 8%. So when should we can make the suspected diagnosis? If there are only 1 shift and 1 secondary standard, or there are 3 secondary standards, we can make the suspected diagnosis. So how about the treatment? The treatment is very important for us because if we just make the diagnosis, we don't know how to treat the patient. It's like the if we find the microorganisms cause the infective endocarditis, but I don't know how to use the antibiotic to treat the patients. So it's like anything like the antibiotic medicine treatment. So we into the principle. Principle is important for all the physician. We need to remember all the principles. First one, we need to use the antibiotic in earlier stage, began after 3 to 5 times blood culture. And second, we need to make full use of the medicine. It's high dose and long course. Long course is usually is 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. But intravenous medication. The third is the intravenous medication by primarily to keep blood concentration high and stable. How to maintain the high and stable? As we know, we need to use the antibiotic several times a day. And the other way, we need to use these drugs intravenous. So all this the method can keep the high concentration of drugs or the antibiotic. If the antibiotic cannot reach the high concentration, it cannot inhibit the growth of the microorganism. If the microorganism cannot inhibit, so it cannot reach the goal of the treatment. But for the infective endocarditis, we need to use the high dose and the long course antibiotic to inhibit the microorganism. It's in order to kill the all microorganisms in circulation. The fourth is before finding definitely pathogenic microorganisms, go to aim at the staphylococcus gram-negative bacteria. But for the subacute to aim at the most staphylococcus. But for the acute, we can choose the penicillin and uncussing. But for the subacute, we just use in clinical, we just use the penicillin. But sometimes some patients are allergic to the penicillin. We can choose the other antibiotic, like the uncussing and so on. But for the last principle, after separating pathogenic microorganisms, we can choose the medicine according to the drug-sensitive test. This is very important for us because all 1, 2, 3, 4 is just to the we don't know which organism caused the infective endocarditis. I just use the antibiotic based on the clinical experience. But sometimes it's not correct. Maybe sometimes the antibiotic cannot do anything for the disease. So we need to do blood culture. Blood culture, one way we can find the microorganism. The other way we can do the drug test. The drug test can provide evidence of the guideline how to choose the antibiotic. So we need to, according to the drug-sensitive test, to choose an antibiotic for the infective endocarditis. It can save some money and save time for patients. For suspected infective endocarditis, the first choice is penicillin. I just said for the subacute, we just choose the penicillin. But some patients are allergic to the penicillin. What can we do the next step? I think there's a lot of antibiotics we can choose, like the gentamicin and synthetic penicillin and amoxicillin, cefoxitin, and vancomycin. But there's doses for each antibiotic. We just learn about that. You cannot, you don't need to remember that because in clinical we just use all the antibiotic doses just based on the clinical experience. It's not based on the textbook. So you just learn about that. You don't need to remember the dosage of the antibiotic because there's so many microorganisms is the resistance for the antibiotic. So the dosage is very low for the conditional treatment. For the penicillin, I just make an example. The penicillin, we just use the 3006 10 up to 4 units. But the textbook just said 1,200 to 2,024 units per day. It's not enough for the infective endocarditis. It's very low for the antibiotic for the microorganism. I think cause this result maybe we just use the antibiotic based on the guideline. We always usually based on the clinical experience. So thanks to so much microorganism is resistant to the antibiotic. So we need to improve the dosage of the antibiotic. But with the progression of medicine, there's so many semi-synthetic penicillin. It has been improved the character and added so much enzyme. That enzyme can improve the sensitivity to the microorganism. So there are so many antibiotics waiting to treat the infective enteritis. But there's other way we can treat the patient, like the set treatment. We can artificial valve replacement. If the leaflet caused by the microorganism, the result shows the incompetence of the valves or the valve stenosis. We cannot use the medicine to keep the good condition. So we need to replace the valve, use the artificial valve. And that way we can clear out excretion. Especially the excretion is too large. Usually, if the excretion is more than 1 to 1.5 micrometer, the patient needs to do the surgery treatment because the antibiotic cannot enter into the excretion. So the microorganism in the circulation cannot be inhibited by the antibiotic. If we can clear out the excretion, we can get rid of all the microorganisms from the circulation. So the second treatment is very important for the severe infective enteritis. So from this point, we can know the internal medicine has its limitation for some disease, especially for the valvular heart disease and end stage of heart failure, and then like the severe infective enteritis. So how about prognosis about the infective enteritis? As we know, infective enteritis is a kind of phase disease, reason forward fatality rate and the recurrence rate is very high. So we need to focus on the prognosis, and first we need to make the diagnosis, and then we need to treat it correctly. For the acute patients, without treatment almost died in 4 weeks. I just said for acute infective enteritis, the disease progress of the acute infective enteritis is only 6 weeks. So here, I recommend all acute patients without treatment almost died in 4 weeks. So we need to treat the disease very quickly. The 5-year survival rate after curve is 60 to 70%. 10% recruited in several months or years after treatment. So one way we need to treat the disease. In the other way, we need to protect them from the occurrence. How to prophylaxis? The first one, we need to take some medicine to do some prophylaxis, especially we have undergoing some surgery, like the urinary, genital, and alimentary tract surgery or operation. Okay, that's all the contents I just discussed in this class. So we need to review all the contents. I hope you can remember the definition of the infectious endocarditis and the diagnosis method of the infectious endocarditis. And the last one is the principle of the antimicrobial treatment of the infectious endocarditis. So class is over. Thank you.